I trust you all well. I trust that you enjoy the program so far. Well, welcome to Module 3, Lesson 5. I'll be sharing with you death notification, the procedures and the support that we can give. Now, as a chaplain, this is one of the hardest tasks that you'll be performing. You can plan your day according to the time. But unfortunately, death hasn't got a set time. Death doesn't happen 8 to 5 office hours. So therefore, chaplains, your office door can never be closed. You're on notification and on standby 24/7. Now, I remember when I was growing up, there was no technology and everybody had a landline. And people knew that when the phone rings after hours, excuse me, or early hours of the morning, it's normally bad news. If your doorbell rings at 11, 12, 1 o'clock in the morning, then you know it's bad news. So it is an emotional task that a chaplain needs to perform. So it's never pleasant. It's never pleasant. But I'm going to ask you a few questions. And I hope that my statements that I make now would help you in your journey when you deal with death notification. Should you, or would you, prefer to hear about the death of your loved one on the radio or on a WhatsApp group where you just on a group and they say, our deepest condolences for the loss of so and so and so and so? Or do you want to see it in a newspaper? No, I wouldn't want to get notification of somebody close to me passing on a WhatsApp group on social media. No, I would like for somebody to come and tell me in person, especially if it is somebody extremely close to me, like a family member. So always bear that in mind. People don't want to know and hear about a loved one that passed away via. Because we all know via, it's a broken telephone syndrome. So don't make a death notification via phone or send somebody else that might not have the same sensitivity to the matter. Try and do it in person. If it's out of your area, out of your province, then get somebody. If you stay in Gauteng and death notification is somewhere in Cape Town or in Free State, get somebody in that area. We linked up with a lot of chaplains throughout South Africa. So if you don't have somebody in Bloemfontein or wherever it is, get hold of Matt, myself, or Provilli. We will be able to assist. But that death notification needs to be made in person. So how do we do it? There's a few things that you need to know and do your homework before you go and knock on somebody's door. First of all, you need to make sure that you've got the correct address and correct identification. Nobody wants to know of somebody in their family that passed away and he's still sleeping in their bed. Wrong identification. Or wrong address. Wrong address. Imagine what trauma you're putting those people through and you've got the wrong information. So you work very closely with the law enforcement agencies. They will give you the proper information as they have done their homework. So what do you do when you get there? Is it a hit and run? Do you go in and say, hey, I am so-and-so and I'm here to give you bad news? No, not at all. Before you go, you need to try and establish the people that's going to receive the bad news, the death notification, the survivors. What's their health situation like? What if there's a person that you're going to be breaking this bad news to that's got a heart condition, that suffers from a blood pressure issue? You need to have all that information in order to make a call before you go and knock on their door. If need be, have a medical personnel on standby to go with you, for in case something happens and they don't receive the news well, that medical assistance is there. It's always nice to go with a law enforcement agency that is in uniform. So when you get there, you knock on the door. What do? You introduce yourself. You introduce all parties that's there. This is one task that a chaplain hardly ever, and I repeat, hardly ever does on his own. It's always advisable to go in pairs of two. Even more so, male and female team. So when you knock on the door, what I normally do, and it's not in the manual, that's just my personal thing that I do when I do death notification, is you don't do it on the veranda. You don't do it in the car park or in the driveway. Ask if you can be asked to be invited into the house. The first thing I normally ask is, have you got dogs? If the answer is yes, can you please put them away? Because you don't know how the dog's going to react. And like I said, this is not in the manual. But you don't know how the dog's going to react if they see their owner is traumatized. They might just attack. So you invite yourself in after you've introduced yourself. If there's any kids there, ask them if they could leave the lounge or the room that you're in. It's better to break the news to them at a later stage. Remember, in a kid's mind, there's the police. There's somebody else in uniform. That already puts them in a state of emergency, a state of what's going on, of fear. So let them leave the room. First speak to the adults. Now, when you speak to the adults, be specific. Don't be vague. The deceased, address him by name, not the body or the person. Mr. So-and-so, Mrs. So-and-so, Kosi, Sunny, Pity, whoever, but address the person so that you show a bit more sympathy, empathy, but you're down to the point. There's no confusion of who you're actually referring to. Don't be vague. Don't say, Sally was lost and she passed away. Don't be directed to the point. Like, your daughter Sally was in a car accident, and she was killed. Your father, Tom, was shot today, and he died. That's straight to the point. Be serious about it. You know, we joke quite often, and we say, yeah, you know, when we do death notification, we will go and say, oh, remember your daughter's, you were planning her 30th birthday party and you didn't know who to invite. Guess what? You don't need to invite anybody because she's no longer alive. That's not sensitive. That's not sensitive. Be sensitive. Always put yourself in their shoes. How would you want to receive death notification? Straight to the point? Yes, straight to the point. Don't beat around the bush. Never or avoid things like, I know how you feel. We don't know how you feel, how they feel. Remember in lesson 1, I mentioned that we're all not wired exactly the same. So you might react and feel emotionally in that state of mind, in that frame of mind. Not everybody else is in that frame of mind. So avoid, I know what you're going through. Avoid that. Be very careful not to force your religious beliefs onto them, like making statements like, it's God's will. Don't say that. Don't say, you know what, at least she had a very good innings. That is generally viewed as offensive and insensitive to the ones that is going through the grieving process. Rather say something comforting that and more appropriate, like, I am sorry this had to happen to you. Remember, your presence and your compassion is very important at that death notification. Show compassion. Go back to lesson 1 and refresh your memory on what is compassion. Like I said, provide enough information. You might get them that they're angry. Be prepared for that. I've heard many years ago of a chaplain that went to give death notification, and the man of the house walked to his bedroom, came back with a gun and threatened the chaplain with a gun because he didn't want to hear the news. But that's very far and few between. But be prepared for anger, crying sessions. Be prepared for that, because remember, not everybody reacts the same way. Very important. This is not a hit and run. We don't just give the news and run away. No. Ask, can I phone somebody else on your behalf? Wait for their own internal supporting structure, supporting people to arrive on the scene. Because remember, say for argument's sake it's 2-3 o'clock in the morning, they're half asleep. Now you've got to give them the bad news of a loved one's passing. 3/4 of the information they've forgotten. So be there when the support family members get there. Another question I'm going to ask you. If somebody passed away, do you want to take their belongings in a black bag and say, you know what, there's your husband, your dad, your grandfather's belongings in a black bag? No. When you do death notification, you don't take any belongings with. It's bad enough that they need to cope and deal with the initial shock and trauma. They don't need to see the belongings at that point in time. You will be asked the question, where can they view the body? Um, once again, use your own discretion. I've had it 2-3 years ago where the person was in, can't call it a few body bags, but the body was broken up. And I advised them it's not a nice sight. But they needed closure. And the only closure that I could give them at that point in time was a shoe. But remember, it still remains the survivor's decision to see the body. But prepare them for that. Okay. Then, after the death notification, the chaplains will go and have a debriefing session amongst themselves on what went wrong, how was it, what was said, how can they do things better, because remember, each and every death notification is different. Also, I forgot to mention, before you go out, you and your fellow chaplain will decide who's going to say what, who's performing what role, so that you don't fall over each other's words, and I was supposed to do that, I wanted to do that. You clarify beforehand who's going to do what. So debriefing must take place as soon as possible. Because remember, you carry some form of emotions with you when you leave. You deal with people's emotions. And for a lot of us, it hits home. For a lot of us, we can revert back to when we got notification of a loved one passing. So it will bring back certain emotions. So debrief as soon as possible. Like I said, it's not a hit and run. So after death notification, your job's not done. First of all, you need to put it in a report to us. But after the death notification, follow up the next day. Make a phone call. Make a phone call. Be there for the person. And in closing, when you deal with a suicide, death by suicide, don't be afraid to use the word suicide. And when you give a notification, look the person in the eye. Don't just go and say, yeah, no, he passed away, he died because of suicide. Failing to use the word suicide, what you're actually doing is you're communicating to the survivors that it's something to be ashamed of. But especially when you're dealing with death by suicide and you need to notify them, avoid any answers that requires a yes/no answer. And remember, chaplaincy is a ministry of presence. Chaplaincy is a ministry of compassion and empathy. I hope that this made it a bit more clearer. You will be able to read more in depth in the manual. Any questions, please contact me or Matt. My number is 071 379 3136. I greet you all. Shalom.